All right, so we've got 2,200 canceled flights across the country because of the storm. We also have more than 3 million people in Florida who have no power this morning. Now, Hurricane Milton is still making its way across Florida, and it's still making a mess of things.
More than 100 homes and businesses have been leveled as we're learning the state saw 30 reported tornadoes. The National Weather Service issued 126 tornado warnings on Wednesday. That is the most ever for a single day in Florida. One tornado hit north of Fort Pierce on Florida's Atlantic coast, leading to the deaths of multiple people. Search and rescue crews are now looking for survivors.
And then we have some video coming in from St. Petersburg. Do you know what you're looking at? This is Tropicana Field, where the Tampa Bay Rays play, and the roof just torn clean off. Now, first responders were actually using that as a shelter. No reports of anyone being injured, thank goodness. But I mean, they were there with cots covering the entire field here. Not the only damage to the city, of course, though.
No!
Can you imagine? So those were the winds that knocked over a construction crane in the downtown area of the city. So one person who was there told our sister station in Tampa that she thinks it was the Tampa Bay Times building that got crashed into.
I'm on the south side of the building. So for me, my experience was just feeling a big shaking sensation. It was pretty scary and frightening. And then I immediately got a text from neighbors and friends that no one knew what happened.
Now, no reports of anyone being injured in that particular collapse, but the storm also caused a major water main break in St. Petersburg, so the city had to shut down the water system and put everyone under a boil water notice. So not only, no power for people, but also now no drinkable water. All right, so we've got 2,200 canceled flights across the country because of the storm. We also have more than 3 million people in Florida who have no power this morning. Now, Hurricane Milton is still making its way across Florida, and it's still making a mess of things.
More than 100 homes and businesses have been leveled as we're learning the state saw 30 reported tornadoes. The National Weather Service issued 126 tornado warnings on Wednesday. That is the most ever for a single day in Florida. One tornado hit north of Fort Pierce on Florida's Atlantic coast, leading to the deaths of multiple people. Search and rescue crews are now looking for survivors.
And then we have some video coming in from St. Petersburg. Do you know what you're looking at? This is Tropicana Field, where the Tampa Bay Rays play, and the roof just torn clean off. Now, first responders were actually using that as a shelter. No reports of anyone being injured, thank goodness. But I mean, they were there with cots covering the entire field here. Not the only damage to the city, of course, though.
No!
Can you imagine? So those were the winds that knocked over a construction crane in the downtown area of the city. So one person who was there told our sister station in Tampa that she thinks it was the Tampa Bay Times building that got crashed into.
I'm on the south side of the building. So for me, my experience was just feeling a big shaking sensation. It was pretty scary and frightening. And then I immediately got a text from neighbors and friends that no one knew what happened.
Now, no reports of anyone being injured in that particular collapse, but the storm also caused a major water main break in St. Petersburg, so the city had to shut down the water system and put everyone under a boil water notice. So not only, no power for people, but also now no drinkable water. All right, so we've got 2,200 canceled flights across the country because of the storm. We also have more than 3 million people in Florida who have no power this morning. Now, Hurricane Milton is still making its way across Florida, and it's still making a mess of things.
More than 100 homes and businesses have been leveled as we're learning the state saw 30 reported tornadoes. The National Weather Service issued 126 tornado warnings on Wednesday. That is the most ever for a single day in Florida. One tornado hit north of Fort Pierce on Florida's Atlantic coast, leading to the deaths of multiple people. Search and rescue crews are now looking for survivors.
And then we have some video coming in from St. Petersburg. Do you know what you're looking at? This is Tropicana Field, where the Tampa Bay Rays play, and the roof just torn clean off. Now, first responders were actually using that as a shelter. No reports of anyone being injured, thank goodness. But I mean, they were there with cots covering the entire field here. Not the only damage to the city, of course, though. Can you
Wow.
imagine? So those were the winds that knocked over a construction crane in the downtown area of the city. So one person who was there told our sister station in Tampa that she thinks it was the Tampa Bay Times building that got crashed into.
I'm on the south side of the building, so for me, my experience was just feeling a big shaking sensation. It was pretty scary and frightening, and then I immediately got a text from neighbors and friends that no one knew what happened.
Now, no reports of anyone being injured in that particular collapse, but the storm also caused a major water main break in St. Petersburg, so the city had to shut down the water system and put everyone under a boil water notice. So not only, no power for people, but also now no drinkable water.
Jimmy John's new Smoked Cheddar Bourbon Club is a top-notch sandwich for top-notch individuals.
was spinning off some of these major tornadoes. I think there was probably more tornado watches on this storm than anyone I can remember. You see a little bit of the damage here. Then, of course, down the road in the country club, what are you up to? You have 5 confirmed fatalities?
We have 5 fatalities.
So, this is really just, and it's a tragic thing because it's not like, oh, they should have evacuated. What do you do when you have a tornado? You kind of duck and cover. Happens so quickly. Those things are really, really strong and powerful. And so we're surveying some of the damage that was done on the east coast of Florida, and then now in the process of assessing some of the damage throughout the state from the storm surge on the west coast, some of the wind damage that you saw go across the Florida peninsula. As of this morning, we've had, I know the state has been involved in definitely dozens of rescues. I know our local partners are doing. We've been supportive of really everywhere around the state, including here. And we'll continue to do that, but my sense is that will stabilize and we're probably going to be on a pretty good footing there pretty soon if we're not already. As people know, we've had massive power outages, which was expected. I'd say this is probably similar to Hurricanes Irma and Ian in terms of the number of outages. I think we're up to, currently now it's about 3.4 million that are out. I think they've restored about 700,000 since the storm started. So just do the math, you're over 4 million have lost power since the start of this storm. Fortunately, Florida, we pre-staged 50,000 linemen throughout the state of Florida, and so those folks are going to work. And it's not as easy to do when you've just had Hurricane Helene. A lot of these linemen, there's still hundreds of thousands of people without power in North Carolina, Georgia, some of those states. Helene in Florida, we did 2.4 million restorations in record time. That's not the norm. And so finding the linemen, given what they're doing now, we brought them in from as far away as California. But those folks are there. There's assessments being done about what needs to be done. When you have down power lines, that's actually easy for them to do. They just put the pole back up, reconnect it. If their entire system needs a rebuild, that will take a little longer. We don't know that that's the case in many of these spots. I remember in Hurricane Ian, which was stronger than this one, hit Fort Myers Beach, and FPL substation on Fort Myers Beach right there at Ground Zero was fine. They could have had people hooked up to power days later. Just the people's homes couldn't accept it because of the storm surge. So all that is going on, and we're happy to have pre-staged those resources because I think it's really important that we'll be able to do. We're also assessing the need for things like points of distribution. We typically will set up these pods with water, food, tarps, things of that nature. I think we will be doing some pods. A lot of this is based on what the counties ask us for, but I also think you're probably going to see a lot of the stores and gas stations reopen very quickly. At least that's our hope. We're also looking at the damage that was done to the ports in Florida. East Coast, I don't think there was very much, if any. Port of Tampa seems like it's okay. Manatee, that remains to be seen. But bottom line is we got to keep bringing fuel into this state. I know there's a lot on the dockside still that can be brought out. We've got 1.5 million gallons of diesel on hand that we can use for the state and to help replenish. And I think we've got about 1.1 million gallons of regular gasoline just in our arsenal. And then we've also deputized the Florida Highway Patrol to escort the fuel tankers with sirens to be able to get to all the gas stations to get filled. I think you're probably going to be okay on the east coast of Florida. Some of the places in the Tampa Bay area, when there was evacuation, everyone was going to get gas, and some people were filling up additional tanks in addition to what was in their car with the gallon containers or whatever they have, which is fine, but just the demand went through the roof. And so these guys ran out. We had enough fuel in the state, it's just they didn't have the delivery schedule to be able to replenish it immediately, so you had some that went out. So we've been doing this. I think we've done probably about 130 escorts with Florida Highway Patrol bringing this in. We'll continue to do that. So my hope is that there's minimal interruption with fuel on the backside of this storm. We've had a lot of people have been working very hard. I think, as most of you know, we've been doing this now for 2.5 weeks. From the time we declared the state of emergency before Hurricane Helene, and then in the aftermath of Helene, and then we work on Helene for a week in terms of the response and the recovery, and then we got to do another state of emergency for Hurricane Milton, and it's just the way you go. So people have been working 24/7, particularly on the west coast of Florida. We got a lot of first responders that have been working really hard. Kevin and his team, all of our state agencies get mobilized when we have these types of events, and they've been working nonstop. So my hat's off to everybody that's worked hard. Unfortunately, we have the fatalities from this tornado here. We don't have confirmed reports of other fatalities throughout the rest of the state, but we may as the day goes on. My sense is that a lot of the people did leave who were in the evacuation zones. I know we had over 80,000 people staying in shelters. You had massive heavy traffic on the interstates over the last several days leading up to the storm, because I think people were deciding, to just get out of Dodge. We also can say that the storm did not produce the worst case scenario in terms of storm surge. If you remember, about 24 hours ago, maybe 36 hours ago, the fear was Category 4, strong 4, going into Tampa Bay, producing about 15 feet of storm surge. That's an area with Pinellas County Peninsula and then the surrounding areas in Hillsborough County that is very low lying, very susceptible to storm surge. That did not end up happening. The storm did weaken before it hit land, and then it did bear further to the east and south of Tampa Bay. So I think a lot of what they had was the wind sucked water out of Tampa Bay. You did have storm surge in Sarasota, Venice, Charlotte Harbor, and all the way down the west coast of Florida, and some significant storm surge, but not to the worst case scenario of what we were looking at. I mean, for example, Helene, we had storm surge in Taylor County up in North Florida that was probably about 20 feet in places like Deacle Beach and Horseshoe Beach. And that is the real deal. I mean, we have examples in American history where you've actually had a lot more than that, 24, 25 feet, Mississippi, Texas, Camille, some of those. But to have 18 to 20, that's a big deal. So doesn't mean there's not going to be a lot of damage. Doesn't mean there's not going to be a lot we're going to have to contend with. But just in terms of what we were prepped for, I think that we probably have an abundance of resources. My sense is we'll probably be able to release a lot of the search and rescue resources that we've had on hand very soon, and then just get back to getting everybody back online with power, making sure the gasoline's flowing and everything. So all in all, everyone's done a good job up to this point. We got a lot more work to do, and I'll let Kevin come in and say a few things.
This is how AI optimizes my schedule. This meeting got canceled. Hooray! We didn't really.
Thank you, Governor. I think in this situation here, where we're at, the strength of what happened here is organically our state mutual aid system. The very first group that was on hand here was a Palm Beach County Fire Rescue Search and Rescue Team. That's not even officially a part of our state 8-team search and rescue team system. Maybe we want to change that in the future and put them on that. But that Type 3 team, which is self-funded 100% by Palm Beach County Fire Rescue, was the first ones in to this situation, followed up by Miami-Dade Task Force 1, and then Ohio and Virginia Task Force. And again, I think that's just a strength of not just the state emergency response team and the state emergency response plan, but also outside states helping states. Some people were a little critical of the governor sending state assets up to North Carolina, but right here when we needed them, of course we got all those guys back, but immediately Virginia, Ohio, California, and other states from around the country had their assets right here. So this is one of those examples. The sheriff was telling us about this when we were walking up. He was very grateful for those assets being in here so quickly, but that's the strength of the State Emergency Response Team, the State Emergency Response Plan, and then the greater Emergency Management Assistance Compact that we pull from. So we're not going anywhere. We're going to be here. This is the first day of many, many to come, probably over the next couple of years. Again, it's going to take us a long time to get all the recovery done, but we're not going to let bureaucracy get in the way. We're going to get this done as quickly as we possibly can. So thank you, Governor, for your leadership.
you want to maybe just give an update on what we think we're going to get from FEMA for debris
Oh,
removal?
sure. Yeah. So we're gonna start getting back in the debris removal business. And, we're gonna supplement where we need to supplement. But we had a really good conversation with Administrator Criswell, who is here in Florida and is actually on her way somewhere in this general direction. But she is working with us on how we could ensure that debris gets picked up quickly. How do we, and the right word is not incentivize it, but if you're in the private sector, it would be, how do we incentivize haulers to get stuff picked up faster, bringing in people from around the country to get that done. We're also looking at potentially, again, a mutual aid effort where we may bring in some city and county assets that have the claw trucks and the loader trucks from around the state of Florida and maybe even outside the state of Florida to help us get that stuff picked up. So again, she's very, very helpful on getting those things done, making sure that we got everything that we need. We will be submitting, hopefully by this afternoon, now that we got post landfall and we got some data, we'll be submitting through the governor's signature a major disaster expedited request so that we could get those federal funds turned on and start looking for reimbursement. But again, we're not going to wait on the feds for reimbursement. We're going to do what we need to do the right thing, get people and Floridians back on their feet. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I mean, so this whole debris, it's just. I mean, you had like in Pinellas, they didn't want to do the debris as fast because they weren't sure about the paperwork and about FEMA reimburse. And it's like, you got to get the debris off. And these storms, because of the way it's done, really incentivizes it to go a lot longer with the debris. And sometimes the debris in these major storms is around for a year. And how ridiculous is that? So what Kevin's doing, and I think the administration wants to work with us, is to let's align these incentives so we can get the job better. You'd think the private sector would do it so much better than government. At least that's what I would think. And yet on this debris after Helene, when we saw how much was there and we knew another storm was coming, we got all our Department of Transportation assets from Florida. We were bringing trucks in from all over the state that are doing their normal duties, and we surged them over to the barrier islands off the Gulf Coast of Florida, and we did like 3,000 truckloads of debris, reduced the debris by 50% in 72 hours. So, and we did round the clock. We had 24/7 shifts going, but that's a sense of urgency. So I just think that, that may be an extreme, like doing 24/7, but I mean, you should be able to get the debris done earlier than that. So I'm hoping that they can do this in a way that's going to make sense so that the local governments can bring their contractors in and clean up the debris. We'll see what the debris was left on this storm. I don't think we have a real good sense about how much compared to the other. I mean, I think the storm surge overall was not as high as the others, but I also think it probably the winds hit more of the Florida peninsula on this. So I think in terms of tree damage, I think you're going to see a lot of that. And then of course, we had more tornadoes for Milton than we did for Helene. So we'll see how all that shakes out. But I really think, getting a better posture on how they do the debris reimbursements would make a lot of sense. And I think it would move this process along a lot further. And it's also just a morale thing. You get hit with a storm, seeing debris is just a constant reminder that you got hit. When things get picked up, things look nice, people feel a lot better about it. So we got to make sure they get that job done. Okay, do we have any questions? Yes, I spoke with the president this morning, and Kevin was on the phone with me. We were on, the administrator of FEMA was in the office with us in Tallahassee at the Emergency Operations Center, and he said he wants to be helpful. And so if we have requests, he said send them his way, and he wants to help us get the job done. So I appreciate being able to collaborate across the federal, state, and local governments and work together to put the people first. I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I think it's, so, you do have these tornadoes, the warnings, how many actually touch down is probably a different one. But I would say what I've seen so far is that St. Lucie had the most tornado damage of anyone I've seen. Do you agree with that with your reports?
Yeah, and